Well, today I'm going to show artists how to make their subjects more three-dimensional. How to,
Really?
yeah, we're going to do it. I'm gonna
Okay,
show you
cool.
some tips about that.
Okay, well, let's get started.
Hey, how are you, Eric? Good to see you again.
Nice to be seen and nice to see you. So let's talk about this idea of three dimension. The very first thing is, why is it important?
Well, it's important because when we have a subject and we're out there painting, we want to make sure that we have direct light on the subject so that we can see the form. And then we want to make sure that what's happening in the shadow is also giving us some information. A
All right.
lot of artists have a lot of trouble getting beyond just the drawing and kind of getting some values in. And today I just want to do a little bit of demonstration about how we can make our paintings more three-dimensional using that reflected light.
Okay, so you're going to use this ball as a demonstration?
Yes, I'm going to use the ball as a demonstration. I'm just going to switch this over here real quick.
All right.
Hang on for a second.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's just my hand in the way. But
Okay.
here we are right on the canvas. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of what I'm talking about. So normally when a painter gets busy painting something like that ball, the first thing they do is they get into this. Basically, they do a drawing of the ball itself. And very, very frequently, artists who are just getting started don't know what else to do. So they put a little bit of texture in there. And I'm going to try to help guide you a little bit with some information.
Okay.
Instead of just starting with that, start with a direct light source. So here's an example of a ball with a direct light source on it. You can see that there is a powerful light source. It's good and strong, but it doesn't give us much more information than what direction the light is coming from. This, however, gives you at least a lot more information than that. So now let's move to the next step. And now what we have, can you see that okay? A little bit of reflected light in here. That's when the light that it's direct hitting on the surrounding area bounces back in to the ball. And here, I've done a demonstration where I've brought a little bit of color in so we can talk a little bit about color temperature, a little cooler color in the shadows, and a little bit warmer where the light is. And now we're going to go off to Bryce Canyon, where I'm going to put some light into a painting that doesn't have much light in it.
And this is going to show us how to turn this into a three-dimensional object.
Yes, this does not really have three dimensions right now. What you see here are forms that are in Bryce Canyon. This is one of my favorite places to paint. You'll see that there's a trail. I can't really see it here because I don't have enough light on it. And you have lots of texture. Many, many artists do this. They start with texture, they start with shape, but they don't pay enough attention very, very often to the direction of the light or the bounced light going on to make it three-dimensional. So I'm going to do something, and I just want you to watch this. I'm taking a little bit of sunlight on this side of this hoodoo.
So you're putting it on, you're kind of putting an edge on it, plus letting a little light hit the internal edges?
I'm letting the light come right up to the edge of this canyon. And this is the sun doing its thing, telling us what direction that sun is coming from. And I think you'll see a transformation in this painting as I put light in it. And I'm starting with the right side. This is the direction that the light is coming from. It's coming from the right and it's moving to the left.
Ooh, ah.
So what I'm using here is a titanium white with a little bit of cadmium red, a little bit of orange. And this is basically my reference for this is a painting that I had done, which maybe we'll show you later, but it's I had done it when I was in Utah this year, and I go there a lot to paint. And again, I'm just hitting the right side because I want to be consistent. The strongest light source in this painting is the sun, and it is on the right side of the scene.
I'm going to ask you a really silly question.
Please do.
That rock that you're working on, that tower you're working on right now, is obviously further back.
Yes.
And typically when you're painting something like that, you're painting it a little bit lighter or less yellow or whatever to create distance. Do you have to do that with your light when you add that too?
I think yes, you do if you're going to go back very, very far. This particular piece of stone is probably about 100, 200 feet beyond this one. So
Okay,
it's not too far back. I wouldn't push it. I wouldn't alter the light on this too much. But as the light does go back, and back here, I will put some lights. I'm going to add a little bit of alizarin to that because as the lighter things move back into the distance, and again, this is related to the 3D effect of atmosphere. You want to let the lighter things get a little bit pinker as they go into the distance, and the darker things as they move away are going to get a little bluer. And that's kind of how you get that purple haze in the distance.
because air filters out the waves for yellow.
Exactly. So I'm just, again, for those of you who are following along, I'm just putting the sunshine on the right side of these because the sun is coming from the right. I can't repeat that enough. Very often, plein air painters who are just getting started or who sometimes I do it too. Sometimes I just forget the direction of the direct light.
Well, especially if you've been set up for 2 or 3 hours, it's moving.
Yeah, exactly. As the sun moves, you really have to pay close attention because you might not want to be painting the same thing after an hour. It's a completely different painting at that point, you know?
Right.
Because the light has changed so much. But to me, it was always a lot of fun. Part of the fun of painting for me has always been to take something flat, like a piece of canvas, and turn it into a three-dimensional experience. And really, I'm still just doing that even now. I mean, I love this whole step. And I think it's a lot of my students have had trouble over the years with plein air painting for there's a lot of things that can get in the way. We're dealing with bugs, we're dealing with temperature, we're dealing with so many problems.
It sounds so much fun.
Yeah, it sounds like such a blast, but it is, in the end, it is so much fun. And one of the things that helps make it a little easier is if we can approach it with an understanding that we're going to keep a nice strong light source and we're going to compose it in such a way that we can just make something that's going to take us to where we want to be. Am I going a little too fast for you, Eric?
Well, everything's always a little fast for me, but yes, you're doing great.
So there's a trail here, as I mentioned, and I'm just going to hit the spots where the sun is bright. Sometimes these trails have lots of stones and textures on them, and certainly that's true in the canyon. And I'm not going to put too much of that in now, but I will suggest some of it.
Well, that's a great trick too, is you put a stone or two in there in a big shadow. It really emphasizes what's happening.
Absolutely. So as I put the light on these rocks, I want to maintain that texture that's makes those canyons so distinctive. And the red rock is so much fun to paint for me because in New England, where I live, I almost never get a chance to use my vermilion or my bright oranges. And when I paint in the desert, it's just all those wonderful warm colors come out.
So in the area you're painting now, if you were to throw some more light in a little bit further to the left, would that light be diminished because it's kind of making the turn? Is it something you'd slightly change the color, or would you continue to use the same light?
I think I would use I'm going to use the same light because I think what this is doing here is it's catching all those little granular bits that are coming off the canyon wall. So it's going to be hitting at this pretty much the same intensity. I think if you were dealing with something like this, it's going to get softer as it bends. But in this case, we're really just hitting those little pieces of stone that are sticking out. And this, again, this is the direct light. And to make this become really 3D, we're going to want to put some reflected light. And
I'll tell you, it's a huge difference already.
Oh yeah, it comes right to life. As soon as you've got some direct light on a painting, it tells you a lot of information about the shapes, the textures, the space that you're dealing with. Without that, you really just have a lot of flat shapes, which can be very interesting and completely worthy of painting. I'm not making a judgment call on people who don't want to, put direct light in their paintings. It's not, absolutely not. I think a lot of Van Gogh's paintings I find are kind of without a direct light source, but but they're gorgeous paintings. So there's different approaches for different artists. This just happens to be one of mine.
Yeah. Well, everybody each their own, right?
Right. I'm going to put a little bit of more orange in some of these spots, and just to highlight a variety of the textures, rather than have everything be bright bright white and with red. Put a little bit of that cadmium orange here and there.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, there you go. So now you can kind of get a sense of some of these textures, and I want to push kind of the natural quality of it too. By that I mean, in nature, things are random. I talk a lot about that in my video, painting the golden hour, and also in shimmering light. The way nature works, it's pretty much random. We're always tempted to kind of make those steady, straight lines. But if you have a tool like a palette knife, you can kind of let the marks be a little bit more random, and because there's some random stuff that goes on under that knife as you spread it across your canvas. And that tends to be a lot more of a natural look.
You could also, if you wanted to create like a spot, make that light more intense, you could use a palette knife to make it thicker. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we call impasto. Love
Uh,
that. Love to have a little bit of that. In fact, I'm just gonna put a little bit of variation of the color here and pick out some of that texture. And one of the things that is a lot of fun for me to paint anyway, whether I'm painting beaches or rocks, is to kind of make all the forms not only speak from the bright side, but also from the shadow side. So now what I'm going to do is bring some of that light that's coming down into the canyon. It's bouncing off this trail. It's bouncing off the ground and coming back up. Okay, so I'm just going in here and sharpening up some of these little forms that are on the side of inside this canyon. I've put some direct light on this side of the forms. And now what I want to do is show you how the reflected light that's bouncing off the ground can come right up and light up those shadows a little bit. And that's really, it's almost like the superpower of painting to me. Is this something that once you start noticing that the light is bouncing off of all these things and then bouncing back into the shadows a little bit, you can really start bringing your paintings to life and to create more of a 3D effect. And usually the light in those shadows, especially on a sunny day, is going to be a lot cooler. So I use a little bit of alizarin and a little bit of cold white, like a titanium white, and just let the light kind of come in there. And I've got this great big scumbly number 7 round that I'm just kind of using to just kind of drag that color in there. So it's a little bit warm relative to.
how much is too much without losing the form in your shadow?
Well, that's the tricky bit, because you don't want to go light as what's over here. So
Yeah.
you've got to keep that tone down. Sometimes it's easier for me to kind of make it a little bit brighter and then knock it down. And especially when I'm dealing with all these textures. So it's a little bit brighter down here, closer
Because
to
it's
the ground, where the light is bouncing.
Yeah.
And then as it moves up, it kind of, especially where there's a little bit of a ledge, it's one of the fun things about painting in these interesting places. The light underneath here, there's an overhang, and it's picking up some of that bounced light as it bounces around. And it's just so much fun, because in those canyons, it's alizarin and vermilion and cadmium orange, and it's just fantastic. The variety is just really fun to paint. So what's fun for me is to do the comparison of the before and the after. When you look at what I started with, which had really no light in it. And I think a lot of artists might have looked at that and thought, well, it's a nice plein air painting, or you've got all the elements there. Once you realize that it didn't have any light in it, and you can put all this light into it, you realize that there's a whole world of possibilities with light that are out there to play with. And I think this does make it more of a three-dimensional effect. And as you say, you don't want to get too light down here. And it's good to knock down some of that if it gets that way, but while retaining some of those textures.
Well, that's a good way to get some of that dark back in there too, is to put it in as texture.
Right, exactly.
Yummy.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, it's amazing how much that transformed what looked like a pretty decent painting in the beginning, but then when you add the light and then add the reflected light, it's just spectacular.
That's the wonderful thing about paying attention to light. There's so much there if you just look. And once people start looking and they start seeing it, you'll find it all over the place when you're painting outdoors. And it's really just remembering that the light is bouncing off stuff. And as it moves away, it's going to cast that reflected light back.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to going back to the canyons. I had a wonderful trip in the canyons with a bunch of painters this year. We went to Capitol Reef and we did a whole bunch of we had just a magnificent time. I mean, to be in a place with 7 serious painters every day. We go back to the house that we were renting, and it was amazing because we each did 2 or 3 paintings a day, and just to look around the room and every day see a whole new set of 20 or 25 paintings, and they're all really good. Oh man, it was a wonderful trip.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, and plein air painting, there was a great story in the magazine about our trip this year, so that was fun to share with everybody.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
So much fun.
We like to make everybody feel like they want to be there.
Yeah,
Tell those stories.
Absolutely. Well, it was. I got a call from a painter who I really admire. This happens a lot now, and they want to go paint somewhere, and she said, "Mark, we're going to rent a house on the edge of the desert at Capitol Reef. We'd love it if you'd come with us." Yes, of
Didn't
course.
even have to think twice.
No, yeah, you had me at the painting at the desert. So, yeah, and then a similar call came in from another friend who wanted to go paint in Tuscany this year, and of course I said yes again, and we just went off and went painting in Cortona. What a great trip that was. I mean, I love going to the plein air events as well because they're wonderful. They're like homework assignments. You go out to these plein air events and you're supposed to, what the assignment is. You have to, in art school, okay, come up with 7 or 8 paintings this week in the vicinity of where we are. And then we'll all hang them up on the wall and critique them. And some of you might win awards and maybe we'll sell some, and that's really exciting for me because I loved art school. And it's kind of like it's like having a week of art school again. Every time I go to one of these plein air events, whether it's, Easton or Texas and plein air, or I love them all, but having a lot of fun with it.
Well, so now that stuff existed 20 years ago. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and there's more and more of them, aren't there?
Yeah, sure are.
It's fantastic.
COVID knocked a couple of them down, but they're coming back.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they're more exciting than ever. There's more and more great painters and more to learn, every trip is an adventure. And I just love meeting other artists who have this passion. I mean, it's really, and there are only maybe a few thousand people in the whole country who do this. for constantly, and it's just it's really exciting to be part of it.
Or if you want to see a lot of them in one place, come to the plein air convention.
Oh, I can't wait to be there. I'm going to be there in.
April,
Looking
May,
forward to it.
May.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, this
So,
has been fabulous. Any final steps?
well, if I had another hour, I might sharpen some things and rough up some things. But the general effect is direct light coming on this side, bounced light coming back in, gives your painting dimensionality. So if I can leave your audience with that, that's a success.
Outstanding. So I want to show the finished painting that you had done before.
Okay.
I'm going to put that on screen. It's a little bit different. The color tones are different, but you can really see where you've maneuvered it and put the, more shadow in, more rocks and a lot more different colors. So it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I do like it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And what am I going to say? I don't like it?
It's okay. I can take it.
Now, why don't you come back on camera for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on for a sec. Let me maneuver this.
I'm getting seasick.
See my studio here.
Yeah, nice. Very nice.
Oh, I love my studio. I really do.
Yeah,
Let me
nice
just
light.
figure out how to hang on. Here we
Okay.
go. And
there we are.
yeah.
Good. Terrific. Well, Mark, why don't you just briefly tell everybody about the difference between the two videos if they had to make a choice between one or the other? I know that's a tough choice, but what would you tell us about shimmering light?
Well, I think shimmering light is a wonderful video for people who want to try to get their hands on the simplest tools to bring bright light into a daytime scene at a beach. There's a lot of information there about how to look at daylight as opposed to other times of the day, bright summer afternoon. And there's a lot of information about bounced light. Now, the thing about painting the golden hour is more about subtleties. There's the light is a warmer light at that time of the day, as the title says, where it's the golden hour. But I try to pick a scene that has a little bit more tranquility. It's not quite so lively, and it's about spreading light. And I get into the textures, how to deal with the textures a little bit more on the beaches, in the grasses, and how that compares to textures in the distance. So,
well,
if you
also,
like that,
by the way, just in both cases, I mean, the idea of figuring out how to get that reflection on the water, that alone is worth the video. And I know you go into a lot of depth about that.
well, there's one other thing which I like about the golden hour, which I don't do it in the shimmering light one. We didn't have to; it was fine. But in the golden hour, I use some techniques that I used to use back in the old days in art school, where I transferred my drawings from a sketchbook onto the canvas using tracing paper. It's an old technique. Maybe a lot of people don't know how to do that. It's a lot of fun to share that little technique as part of that video. So there's little techniques like that from my illustration days that are in that video. And
well, those things are very valuable too, because, when you're trying to figure out how to just paint a ship in there, you're going to struggle with it. By being able to have that tool, you can then just kind of figure it out in advance, work out all the problems, lay it in there.
Yeah.
Make it a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of artists struggle with the details of a drawing, and they're doing the struggle on the canvas instead of on a pad of paper.
Yep.
And I find it way easier to do it on the pad of paper and then transfer it from the paper to the canvas once you've settled out on all the bugs. You can also position it exactly where you want it. Way easier. But as they say, that's old school stuff.
Well, old school to you, but new to some people.
Right,
well, Mark, thank you so much. I think you really helped us get dimensionality in our paintings, learn about reflected light. And the example was perfect because you took something that was flat. It was beautiful, but it was flat. And boom, you added that light, and then you added that reflected light, and it just came alive. I think that's a a great lesson for all of us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark.